Haley Squad. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and ring that bell. I'm getting ready to talk about this movie that I just watched. But before we get off into the movie, we got to get off into this first. I'm catching feelings, baby. Okay, I am back. I just watched this movie called um, Heaven Sent on Tubi. If you haven't watched it, go over there and watch it. If you don't want to know the movie, then like this video still. Come in and say, I'm going to go watch it. Then come back. But don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and ring that bell. Now to the movie called Heaven Sent. What it is this grandmother, this lady. I guess her son passed away, so she took on his only child, which was a young man. And they showed this in the beginning of the video where she, is taking care of him. Well, bam, we fast forward into the future, right? So she's taking care of this young man, but he doesn't have a life. All he does is go on, line streaming, but he doesn't have a lot of fans or anything or people that's liking his stuff because he doesn't have a life. It's boring. So he does have this one friend who's, I'm not going to give color or none of that because it's not important. Just go watch it. He has this one friend that's trying to give him ideas. And then one day he talks about his grandmother to her. Now, the grandmother used to be in this band back in the day or whatever. And so he was like trying to figure out some ideas, to do. So he starts this thing with his grandmother, right? She doesn't know, by the way. Meanwhile, the grandmother owns this shop, right? Where she makes body soaps, fragrant oils, cats. I mean, all kind of stuff. She just makes her own products, right? Now, this man, which is the pastor of the church, his wife has passed away, right? Who has this sister who keeps stalking him, because she doesn't want him to move on, because she doesn't know how to move on from her sister being gone, so she's attaching herself to the one person that she knew loved her sister, until the day she died. So she's attached herself to this pastor and she's not allowing him to live his life, right? Now, meanwhile, this woman who is the young man's grandmother that I'm talking about, she's also not giving anyone a chance because her husband, they have divorced, right? They've divorced and they want they separate. So she hasn't been living her life either because it's like, been there, done that. He wasn't right. He didn't turn out right. I'm tired. I'm just going to, just live my life by myself, So, as you can tell, it's three main characters. It's the pastor, it's the son, and the grandmother, right? So, one day while the grandmother is in her shop, the pastor wanders in there, or runs in there actually, because he's hiding from the sister-in-law that keeps following him. So he runs in there. Now, mind you, the grandmother has a best friend who's trying to hook her up, who's trying to get her into, dating again. So he, ends up in the shop, and she's thinking that the best friend has sent him in the shop. So she's, not paying attention, like, I'm not ready to date and yada, yada, yada. That's what she tells him, right? But she ends up listening to the grandson one day. Well, no, yeah, she ends up listening to him. He's on the phone with the friend that he has met online, and they've been, friends for a minute, I guess, since he's been online, right? She ends up overhearing him talk about how his life is boring, grandmother doesn't do none, yada, yada, yada. So she decides to go to the dating where they switch speed dating. She ends up going to that, which just so happened to be at the church that the pastor runs that ran into her store. She doesn't know this yet though, right? So she goes to the speed dating thing or whatever, and they're both there, right? The pastor wasn't supposed to be involved, but since somebody didn't come and show up, he like took the place of the person. He didn't like it. Neither did the grandmother like it, right? So they end up meeting. She ends up leaving from the table, going outside. So he ends up leaving from the table and going outside, right? So they both, standing there, and he says something like, "This is not for me," or whatever he said. They looked at each other and realized that he was the dude that ran into her store. So they started dating. Well, they went on something that they were supposed to go out, but one of the other characters in the movie, him and his wife was having problems. This is who he's canceling when the movie first started, right? This couple, they're having marital problems, right? So he ends up coming over the day that he was supposed to go on the date with the grandmother, right? So he had to cancel it, right? So he cancels it or whatever. But they end up, going out. And since they was going out, then, they started going out. I don't want to get ahead of myself. So the grandson who was trying to get an idea of what, what I'm saying, like what he can do to become popular, to get friends, to get views online, he starts filming the grandmother, right? She doesn't know this. He starts filming the grandmother. Instantly, he's got like 65,000, by the end of it, 65,000 followers and stuff. Like they're on to the grandmother because the grandmother used to be in a band called Sugar and Spice, right? So they go look her up and they was like, dang, your grandmother's dope, yada yada yada. I would date her. He just started getting these, he starts becoming popular, basically. But the grandmother doesn't know, right? So they started dating or whatever, and one day the sister-in-law went to his house and she realized, she was like, I've seen this look before. You're in love. So because he wouldn't, talk about it or tell her who it was, she followed him, I guess, one day and knew exactly where to go, right? So she goes off into the shop of the grandmother's, and she was like buying soap or whatever, and then she was like, this will be a good present for my man, you know Patrick. And she was like, oh yeah, Patrick. And she was like, yeah, he's a pastor of a church. So of course I know they heard her to the core. So the she act like she was talking to Patrick, which is the pastor, that name. Anyways, so the grandmother instantly like, I'm not finna talk to him no more. I'm not finna have any dealings with him. He lied to me. So one day she meets up. The grandfather sees her online, notices a bunch of views, notice everybody's into it, yada yada yada. So he calls her out of nowhere, right? Calls her out of nowhere. So after the pastor did what he did, what she thought he did, she goes and meets the ex-husband, the grandpa, right? So they're sitting at the table, they're talking, yada yada yada, reminiscing or whatever. And then he busts out and gives her a proposition. Like, we can run this thing, we can do this, we can yada yada yada. I seen your videos online. And she's sitting there like, what are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. And she doesn't, because she didn't know the whole time that her grandson was filming her, right? So she goes home, right? Now, mind you, the friend that the grandson had started getting a little stank attitude with him. She just really had a stank attitude with him, and she stopped talking to him and stuff, right? So meanwhile, the grandmother comes home and she lets him have it. She was like, why you didn't tell me? So you've been taping me. Why didn't you tell me? And what was the purpose? And why would you hurt me like this? And why would you do me like this? And things were said that had to be said, that needed to be said earlier before, all this stuff came out. He was like, "Grandmama, I don't have a life. I don't do anything," basically letting her know that. And he was like, "I think it's time for me to move out or whatever." And the grandmother was like, "I think so too." She was like, and I want you to delete all those videos, right? So, meanwhile, after this happens, the couple he was counseling in the beginning, the wife threw the husband out, right? So he ended up going over there and staying with the pastor. So the pastor finally done put him out. Like, buddy, you gotta go. I done found you a couple. I done found you somewhere to go. So they're playing basketball, right? Well, they're playing basketball, and someone has a heart attack. Mind you, the one he was counseling, he's younger than the pastor, right? So the pastor ends up hurting himself, right? So in the next scene or whatever, she's in the shop and these two women come in that are members of the church, and they're standing there and they're like, "Yeah, pastor just had an accident and I don't think it's looking good," and yada yada yada. So the grandmother hears this and she instantly get in the shop mobile. That's what I'm gonna call it, the shop mobile, and she's on her way. While she's driving and on her way, I don't know if the son was in a room, perhaps in his room, or maybe he was nearby or something. No, he had to be up in his bedroom. I don't know. But she's passing by, right? So he takes out running. Well, I guess when he takes out running and the car just so happened to stop. Well, she was driving, just so happened to stop. So he caught up with him. He was like, "I'm sorry," yada yada yada. So they make up, right? She forgives him. I have to forgive. You have to forgive. That's what she was stating. So while they're waiting, she's like, "What can I do? How far is the hospital? Can we walk there? Whatever. So it's like, "No, if you want to, you can't, we won't be able to make it." So it just so happened to somebody that the son watches on his channel was driving by, because the son, she was like, "What can we do?" So what he did was he started recording, what was going on. That, or I kind of missed that part. He either recorded what was going on and they saw it, or he was just passing by and recognized it. No, because when he drove up, he said her name right. So he had to record, so a video recording it, asking for help or something. And the cat guy, that's what I'm calling the cat guy, end up driving him to the hospital, right? So when she goes into the hospital, the woman that's, been stalking him and stuff, who told her that she was his girl, is starting talking to her, right? And she was like, "I'm sorry, I'll explain everything." And she was like, "I don't want to hear, where is Patrick?" So they tell her what room, he's in. So she goes to the room, right? So when she goes to the room, there's this man laying there in bandages. And she's talking to the man in bandages. And she was like, "You lied to me. You didn't tell me, yada, yada, yada." She was like, I was lonely. I was not wanting to date. You made me alive. And I just want you to know I love you. I may not be saying it word for word, but if you watch it, you'll understand. It'll be the same thing. But anyway, somebody busts out in the other bed and go, "Oh, you love me." Now, meanwhile, it's the man that they was canceling that moved in with the pastor. He had a heart attack. The pastor hurt himself, but not like that. It's the other dude, the one he was canceling. He's in the bed. Now, I love how they put it, because he thought that the wife was saying that she loved him, because mind you, when she's telling the man in the bandages in the other bed that she loved him, the wife was coming around. So by the time he opens the curtain, it looks like she's saying, "I love you." So they make up or whatever. And she turns around. Excuse me. She turns around and there's Patrick, the pastor. And they talking, and she's like, "You lied to me, yada yada yada." And then the sister-in-law comes up, everybody comes in, and he was like, "Who, her? That's Nadine." So she was like, "I don't need to know the name of her. I don't, like, that's not important. I don't care about her name," basically. So they go off into like the closet, but everybody's still recording, because they don't start recording by this time. And he was like, "That's my sister-in-law." And he was like, I love you too, right? So they go outside because by this time everybody's recording them. So they go outside and they kiss and the movie goes off. Yeah, I'm a sucker for romance movies. I just am. And I hope I got y'all to wanting to watch the movie and then we could talk about it. Maybe you could put it in the comments what you liked about the movie, what you didn't like about the movie. I just thought it would be a good movie to share for all those people that are romance people that love romance. I'm a sucker for love. But anyways, it was a good movie. As y'all can tell, I'm smiling from ear to ear just from a movie. I love it. I love it. And I got something out of it too. It works better when you wait on God. Point blank, period. It works better when you wait on God. So, in saying that, I hope you guys enjoyed this little story time of this movie. Again, the movie is called Heaven Sent. Yeah. And like I said, comment about it if you watch it. Subscribe. Comment, subscribe, like, and ring that bell. Sometimes I'll be forgetting what I'm supposed to say. But anyways, until the next video. Bye.